This podcast is a proud member of the UUOP network.
Janine? Anybody? Hello? Oh, jeez. I guess I'll do it. This is episode 610 of the unofficial Universal Orlando podcast, May 7th, 2024. Is that good? Okay.
Possibilities are limitless. Hey, producer!
I trust you're moving us to a better studio on campus?
No, you are being moved off campus. The network board has decided to terminate your involvement. You are to vacate these premises immediately.
This is preposterous. I demand an explanation.
Fine. The network will no longer continue any funding of any kind for your group's activities.
Oh, but the kids love us.
Host Malaby, we believe that the purpose of podcasting is to serve mankind. You, however, seem to regard podcasting as some kind of dodge or hustle. Your jokes are the worst kind of popular tripe. Your hosting is sloppy and your opinions are highly questionable. You, Host Malaby, are a poor podcaster.
Okay, I see.
And you have no place in this studio or in this network. Thank you, sir.
This is a major disgrace. Forget Spotify or Apple Podcasts now. They wouldn't touch us with a 10-meter cattle prod.
Oh, you're always so concerned about your reputation.
Personally, I liked the network studio. They gave us money and facilities. We didn't have to produce anything other than a podcast, of course.
Chris, you've never been out of the studio. You don't know what it's like out there. I've worked in the private podcast sector. They expect results.
Look, for whatever reasons, Chris, call it fate, call it luck, call it karma, I believe that everything happens for a reason. I believe that we were destined to get thrown out of this dump.
For what purpose?
To go into podcast networking for ourselves.
This podcast recording system that Tracy and I have in mind is going to require a lot of bread to capitalize. Where are we going to get that money?
I don't know. I don't know. You're never going to regret this, Chris.
My parents left me that house. I was born there.
Oh, you're not going to lose the house. Everyone has 3 mortgages nowadays.
But at 19%, you didn't even bargain with the guy.
Chris, for your information, the interest rate alone for the first 5 years comes at $95,000.
Oh, will you guys relax? We are on the threshold of establishing the indispensable universal podcast of the next decade. Professional podcast recordings and discussions. The network rights alone will make us rich beyond our wildest dreams.
Yeah, right.
Hi, I'm here about the 4th host job.
Do you believe in top 5s, Potkey vacations, Google Meets, UUOP, weekenders, Instagram photography, attraction rankings, which stick gets your lick, the rides at Mamie, and the theory of the Producers Club?
I mean, if there's a steady paycheck in it, I'll believe anything you say.
Well, there's no money, but welcome aboard.
Hey everyone, and welcome to this very special edition of UUOP, our Ghostbusters edition. I hope you enjoyed that little bit of UUOP theatre there. We haven't done any like
Not too
this
spooked.
Other than the Producer Club.
Woo!
I am Pete Venkman, of course, and joining me is Tracy, my Egon Spengler.
Hello, everyone.
And Chris, our Ray Stantz.
Hey.
And Michelle, I'm afraid you got Winston Zedmore.
Oh, to be Winston.
To be fair, Winston is the most richest character
He is.
in the movies now, so...
Does he have leg massagers? Then okay.
Probably for sure does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, this show has actually been in the works for a very, very long time. I've had the idea for this episode for probably, I was telling Chris before we started, probably 10 years at this point.
I was going to say, is it tale as old as Gozer?
But obviously with the new film coming out and some bits and bobs, now was the time to pull the trigger. So we're going to talk about the all the iterations that Ghostbusters has seen at Universal Studios Florida over the years. And then we've got some guests as well. So we are first going to take a look at the Ghostbusters Spooktacular.
Yes, the Ghostbusters Spooktacular took place in the current Race Through New York starring Jimmy Fallon building and ran from June 7th, 1990 to November 8th, 1996.
So it was an opening day attraction then, yeah? Mm. Yeah.
Yeah. The show had two different versions. Now, the original version that ran from opening day into the early 90s consisted of a female host telling the audience the story of the Ghostbusters, but being interrupted by a loud crack and a flash of light and the temple doors opening to reveal the three-headed demon Gozer, who is dispatched by the Ghostbusters.
Okay. The revised version, which ran until its close, was hosted by Louis Tully, all hail the king, who was trying to sell ghostbusting equipment to begin creating franchises. Walter Peck barges in to shut down the Ghostbusters and shuts down the containment unit, which unleashes Gozer, and once again, the Ghostbusters arrive to dispatch the demon.
Now, I know we haven't seen this show. Chris and I were talking before we started. Chris, I know you have. Michelle, did you get to see these in person at all?
I think so. When I was watching the YouTube version of it earlier today, I started having flashbacks of being small and like kind of remembering the Stay Puft giant thing kind of scaring me a little bit. So yes, I think I did.
Yeah, it's weird. Obviously, like I sent a YouTube video around to everyone. It was the second version that we got to watch. And to be fair, I think from reading those descriptions, the second version sounded like the better version. But I did point out to Tracy what the weird thing was. For it being called the Ghostbusters Spooktacular, the Ghostbusters are like the smallest part in that attraction.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was Louis Tully's Spooktacular, really, with a bit of Ghostbusters and a bit of Walter Peck.
Which I'm all behind because my favourite character.
Yeah, I mean, he was a Ghostbuster, right?
He was eventually.
Yeah.
The first one, the first iteration of this was even less Ghostbustery if he wasn't doing it.
Yeah.
Right.
That's true.
I mean, the show itself, the actual show portion of it, like the finale was, with the Pepper's Ghost and stuff, was, what, maybe 4 minutes? It was very, very short. It was
good though.
It was basically just a comedy skit to start off. It was funny, to be fair.
We'd have been all over that.
That kid with the pink slime had no idea where to put himself.
Wonder where that kid is now. Can we get him on?
It was funny, but it's just like, they don't make theme park shows like that anymore.
I wish they did.
It was very much the same thing, or similar to how like Earthquake was, right? Like you have that whole 15, 20-minute intro and just kind of keeping guests busy.
Yeah. And the show itself is small. I think if you think back to Earthquake, that whole pre-show section was bigger than the actual attraction portion of it.
100%.
And this was very much the same.
Yeah. Well, and you know how we were talking prior to starting, where watching this video, like I've done this ride a bunch of times. I don't have fond memories like remembering specifics, but when I watch the video, it's like, yeah. This rings a bell. But like as a kid, as much I was a huge Ghostbusters fan. But realistically, like the ride sucked, right? It was what a kid that's 8 years old, let's say, wants to just sit and watch something, right? Unless you're part of the show, that's a different thing. So it's like, yeah, it's boring. Let's do something else that's actually a ride. But then now watching this as an adult, I'm like, God, this is amazing. Yeah, I wish this was there.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Is I vaguely remember seeing it as a kid, but I wish that I could see it now as an adult. Mm-hmm. Like, even though Ghostbusters, I mean, it is coming back, you know, so maybe the newer generations will find some fondness in it like we did as kids, Chris. Yeah. But even if we didn't have the current movies, like, I still think it would be a valid attraction here that people would enjoy watching. Mm-hmm.
Honestly, if parents are doing it right, their kids should know who the Ghostbusters are.
I do think if you're a kid at that age, though, watching that show, being a Ghostbusters fan, I do think, to play devil's advocate, you would have been a little disappointed because, like, where are the Ghostbusters then? Like, it's like I said, it's literally like a 4-minute tag on the end of a comedy skit, basically. But I get it. That's what the 90s were about.
I don't know. I think kids at that time were like more interested in Slimer.
Maybe.
Oh, yeah. That's true. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, it lasted a long time. You know, for a theme park show to last 6 years is a long time, to be fair. Because it's a lot of, you know, it was technologically advanced. There's a lot of actors in it as well. Mm-hmm.
What did I say when the Louis Tully character came on? I just turned to Lee and I said, I could totally have seen Mike Aiello playing that role.
Oh, yeah.
You know.
I had to look real close at the beginning to be like, is that Mike?
Yeah.
We have a guest coming on later who was that character.
Oh, cool.
He also was Walter Peck, and I don't know whether the video we watched was either of them, because he looks very different now.
You know, going back real quick to something you mentioned about having this show last that long, 6 years. Like, that is a long time for a show, but you also got to think about it as being like an attraction, though. right? So like it was a opening day attraction. That's kind of a short lifespan for an attraction.
I suppose from when it opened, yeah.
If you look at it like that, like 90 to 96, so 6 years. That's like saying, you know, Jaws. I mean, not the same level, but those are both attractions, right?
Yeah.
Why did it close? Because I mean, the backdrops are still there.
I think it was a Twister thing. I think they obviously got the rights to Twister, and Twister moved in over the top of it, I guess, just to freshen it up. Because I honestly don't know, because the things we're going to talk about in a minute lasted a hell of a lot longer.
Yeah, I would wager people going through it was probably a factor as well.
Probably.
Because like once you do that once, how often are you going to sit through a 30-minute show? Yeah,
and stand. It's stand.
And stand. Yeah, stand through a 30-minute show. So you can't even take a break.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, moving on, the next thing we're going to talk about is this is a weird. These two things were even weirder for me, but I get it.
Yes.
It was the 90s, but as well as the Spooktacular, Universal Studios also hosted the Street Busters show that ran from 1991 to 1993.
The show featured the Ghostbusters trying to catch the ghost with the most Beetlejuice. It would cease to be performed in 93, but would be replaced by
Extreme Ghostbusters, The Great Fright Way. And that ran from 2002 until 2005. The show was loosely based on the follow-up to the animated show, The Real Ghostbusters. It would begin with Beetlejuice on stage calling for volunteers to join him and dance. Ecto-1 would arrive carrying the Ghostbusters, who would then perform a series of dance routines. Love this. The show ceased to be performed once Universal didn't renew the rights to use the Ghostbusters in the parks.
Huh. Yeah. I really enjoyed this one. I thought it was really funny.
It is funny. I mean, that is a specific charm to the parks, I think.
So that first version was kind of like weird. The second version, which obviously had no connection to, because I don't even know what the Extreme Ghostbusters are, but that second version was hilarious and so much better than the first one.
You could see how they could bring that back today and it would still work.
Yes.
Just swap out some of the songs, keep some of the old ones because they're absolutely brilliant. When they're all Vogue and I was dying.
It was funny.
Yeah, but I could imagine that with like single ladies and stuff like that, because they all like to ham it up to stuff like that. But I was howling at these. I loved it.
Oh my gosh, I thought it was so weird. I thought the whole thing was so weird.
It is. I mean, it is weird.
It's a charm. I would be all over that. I would go and watch that now.
I think it completely makes sense, though, because that's what Beetlejuice does. He takes over people and makes them do what he wants to do. So to take over the Ghostbusters and have them singing and dancing, it's that homage to the Dio section of Beetlejuice. I think it's actually quite clever, to be fair.
Yeah.
I was very impressed by them dancing on stairs.
Yes.
On steps, because I'd have broke my neck.
That the second video we watched, those guys were awesome. Lip syncing were perfect. The dance moves were awesome. It was so much fun. I would watch the crap out of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also, well-known fact, Wayne Brady was one of the Ghostbusters.
Yes.
That performed on the streets, which is kind of cool.
We also have a guest coming up later who was also a Ghostbuster on this show as well.
Wayne Brady's coming on. Cool.
Well, I tried. I'll be honest, I would love them to do something Ghostbusters in the parks right now. I think it would, like I've said this before, if they're going to redo Men in Black, do it as a Ghostbusters attraction, it would be awesome.
Yes.
My goodness.
It would work so well.
Yeah, I mean, I'm for it. And especially since we have those new movies that came, I don't think it has the same effect and feel as the original Ghostbusters, but at least it's new content that you can work off of, and maybe it's like a splash of nostalgia and a splash of newness.
I think it ticks both boxes, honestly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, and honestly, if you take the technology that they're using for Minion Blast with the screens and the guns and put it onto an actual ride that's Ghostbuster themed with screens, that would be super cool.
Can you imagine Minion Blast with the Ghostbusters overlay? I need it.
The Halloween Horror Nights overlay. I need it. Yeah, that would be awesome. I mean, you're never going to see that, but that would be cool.
I'll see it in my head.
Yeah. We need the expansion of Epic Universe to be Ghostbusters World.
Oof.
Can we just get Epic Universe first?
Ghostbusters Universe.
Yeah, we're here trying to plan the new lands.
Yeah.
If they couldn't keep the attraction open for more than 5 years, I don't think they're going to do an entire land based off of it, but
different times.
Yeah,
I mean, like that was at a time when like theme parks, the design that they wanted to do was you ride the movies, or this is what a movie studio looks like. So a lot of the stuff back then, and Michelle, you remember, it was all like experiences rather than rides.
Yeah, it was.
You know, when you're a kid, it's kind of a bummer because you want to ride rides, but things have changed. I mean, I think you can do some pretty cool rides based off of Ghostbusters. Like
agreed.
Riding in the Ecto-1, that would be cool.
And hey, if they are creating a land based on an IP that's about 100 years old, they can bring back something that's 40-year-old.
Exactly.
Speaking of Ecto-1, in the video, did you happen to see like how close that car got to the crowd?
Yeah, it nearly ran people over.
You mean the crowd that wouldn't get out the way?
Yes.
So were people just like
ignorant,
braver back then, or have we just gotten stupider that we don't know to get out of the way anymore?
No, we've always been stupid, Michelle.
Yeah, the difference is now, it's like when the Bluesmobile comes out, they have team members clearing the streets. Back then they didn't. They just went, if you don't get out the way, you'll get run over. You've signed them.
They had nobody.
Yeah.
I was like, what?
Yeah. Even go back and look at if you watch the video of the intro to the Ghostbusters ride, like all that stuff, just watching it would never happen now, right? You couldn't get a kid from the audience on a stage in a chair. Oh, we'll put a seatbelt on him. Like he'll be fine.
Yeah.
No, our culture's way too Sue happy now.
I was going to say litigation happy. That's the problem. Right. The final version of the Ghostbusters that has been seen in the parks was back at Halloween Horror Nights in 2019. Step right into the original Ghostbusters film where ghoulish spirits and ectoplasm-dripping phantasms materialise where you least expect.
Ooh.
A rift between worlds has opened up, releasing apparitions of every shape and size, from the voracious Slimer to the all-powerful Gozer the Gozerian. Your screams only attract more ghosts, and even the Ghostbusters and their proton packs may not be able to avert a catastrophe this big. And we're talking Stay Puft Marshmallow Man big.
The Ghostbusters maze at HHN 29 was housed in Soundstage 22 and saw guests walk through the New York Public Library, the Ghostbusters Firehouse, the Sedgwick Hotel, Dana Barrett's apartment, the firehouse basement with containment unit, and the top of Dana's apartment building. The house contained the library ghost Slimer, Gozer, the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, the Scoleri brothers, the Wendigo Skull Ghost, the Ringleader Ghost, the Cab Driver Ghost, the Subway Ghost, the Terror Dogs, and Zool, as well as the chambermaid from the hotel, Louise Tully, Dana Barrett, Pete Venkman, Ray Stantz, Egon Spangler, Winston Zeddemore, Janine Melnitz, and Vince Clortho. So this was a house that we all did get to go through together.
Yes.
Yes, we did. This is also the first house that me and you went through together, because I was your guide with you buried into my back, but not for long.
No, because it really wasn't that bad of a house. Like, it wasn't super scary, or it was actually kind of silly.
I love how you said no. It's hard for us to judge how scary is a house.
Yeah, we don't have any fear.
Don't have, like, none of them are scary as far as we're concerned.
That's true. I'm getting that way, but like this one was for sure just silly.
The joke house.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. It was.
Yeah.
It was just, it was weird. I think I said this back at the time. You hit the nail on the head when we've talked about it before. It felt like
the Wish version.
Not really the Wish version, but like...
So it was a Timu or somewhere it's called
going back to before Universal actually paid for licenses and just kind of did stuff, and like as Julie Zimmerman's told us, we didn't look for licenses at that point. We just did it, and then if someone came and told us off for it, we'd go,
you apologize
sorry.
afterwards. Yeah.
This is what that felt like. It was Ghostbusters, but it was just a little off.
Yeah, especially like those ghosts in the dark room. I know you guys like it.
I didn't mind it.
I don't know. I get it. Like, it's a cheesy 90s, 80s movie, but it just felt very mom and pop's backyard.
That's what I liked about it.
I mean, that's how the movie is too, though. Like, if you are looking at the movie now, I mean, back then, I'm sure it was like, wow, this is amazing. But now if you look at the movie, you're like, oh, okay, this is silly.
Yeah, we actually just watched it the other day. It was on TV. And it's kind of funny watching it with the lens of 2024.
Very
close.
It's so different.
Let's quickly talk about crappy bits of it. There were some really good beats in there. You know, you got Janine.
She was awesome.
Oh, yeah.
That actress, that cast member, holy crap, she was one of the best I have ever seen.
And again,
so interactive as well.
You don't get to see a Horror Night actor use their own voice in a house. Like, ever.
No, and she used her voice.
Oh, I had tons of interaction with her. She'd go, we've got one. And I'd be like, yes. And she went, that's the kind of spirit we like. You don't get that in a Horror Nights house.
No, and it's cool that she could go off script even, you know, on top of using her own voice.
Yeah.
The actual bit with Dana on the plinth, where you look through,
that
it was
beautiful.
Actually really well done watching it again through that YouTube video we watched.
Not so much as sat in the armchair, because that Come on, Universal.
It was terrible.
You gave her elbow-length gloves to look like, what was it called?
The Terror Dogs.
The Terror Dogs. It's like, just wrap it around the back of the chair. It would have looked better.
It was watching it again last night. It looked way worse than I even remember it going through the house. It was
like the worst struggle you've ever seen in your life, because she's just hugging herself and going, like, wiggling her legs and just rocking side to side. The chair was like,
something like that.
Sell it,
the
girl.
Actor's got to sell it, and the ones that we saw really didn't.
Like the Goza.
Gosh, she was terrible as well.
Just so lackluster.
Yeah, there was a couple of them.
It's like, get you back into it, love. Yeah, the Ray Stantz actor, he was really good. It doesn't matter which cast it was. He was was a consistent character. He was really good.
And then Pete Venkman at the end, that poor guy that just did, like, on his half-hour rotation, every 20 seconds. We came, we saw, we kicked his ass. Pause. We came, we saw, we kicked his ass. That was it. That's all he did. He didn't have to move, just say those words, and that was it. That is they could have given him something more to do than that.
That's why we started the high fives. Although in the one we watched, the actor playing him was about 12.
It didn't look like Bill Murray.
He was prepubescent Bill Murray.
Was.
Yeah.
It was still fun.
I loved it.
That's all you can ask for from a Ghostbusters house, really.
Yeah. It was that thing of, like, when that house got announced, I was so excited about it. And it was the same with The Last of Us last year, that if you go into a house with the expectations of it's something that you love that much, it's rare that it's ever going to hit that peak.
Yeah.
This had some great effect as well. The ghost vault, whatever you call it, that wall.
Oh, yeah, that was
the brickwork, because it did actually push out.
Yeah.
A glow. And then there was, the is it a maid? In my head it's the library ghost, but that can't be right, because it's the trolley, and it's got
the flaming toilet roll.
I every time I went past, I know exactly it's just a fan and a light, but
what the hell are you doing?
I loved that effect.
The actual library ghost was pretty cool, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See, I loved that because we walked in straight into the stacks.
Yeah.
And that was fantastic, but trying to slow down enough so you could see what the books were, because there was hints in there.
Easter eggs. Yep.
It was cool, like walking into that house with the Ghostbusters theme music playing. It did get you amped for what was coming. It was cool, but it didn't quite hit it for me.
Oh, it did for me. But I went in expecting it to be the fun house.
Yeah.
So
I hope they bring back a Ghostbusters house for this new movie. That's all.
That'd be cool.
Yeah. Whoa! What the hell was that?
The podcasters. Gozer the Gozeri. Gozer the Distractor. Vulgar Siltrohar. The podcaster has come. Choose and perish.
What do you mean choose? We don't understand.
Choose the form of the Distractor.
Whoa, I get it. Very cute. Whatever we think of. If we think of Lou Wasserman will appear and destroy us. Okay, so empty your heads. Empty your heads, everyone. Don't think of anything. We've only got one shot at this.
The choice is made. The podcaster has come.
Whoa, nobody chose anything. Did you choose anything?
No.
Did you?
My mind's totally blank.
I didn't choose anything.
I couldn't help it. It just popped in there.
What popped in there?
I tried to think.
Look.
No, it can't be.
What is it?
It can't be.
What did you do, Chris?
It can't be.
Oh,
it's Seth Kubersky, the unofficial guide's author.
Hey Seth, welcome to this special Ghostbusters episode of the show. We've already discussed the Spooktacular, both street shows and the HHN29 house, but as we've discussed, you actually got to work as a Tech 5 stage technician on the Ghostbusters Spooktacular, so we have invited you on to kind of tell us what it was like to work behind the scenes. Give us some juicy little tidbits of insider knowledge, please.
Ooh. Oh, I wish I could give you lots of juicy tidbits, but unfortunately, that was a long time ago, and my brain only holds so much. When I started writing books about Disneyland and Universal in Las Vegas, I had to remove a lot of core memories. There wasn't space on the racks.
Yeah.
So I'll try to dig up what I can. I was a Tech 5, which was almost the lowest level that you could be in the technical department of Universal Entertainment. There was one lower, which was the stage assistant. A Tech 5, basically, you had you had some sort of degree in theater and you had a pulse.
Okay.
To be a stage assistant, you had a pulse.
Gotcha.
So I just came in. I only moved to Orlando in the summer of 1996, right after I graduated college. And I spent a couple weeks trying to get a job at Disney and went around in circles. And then one day I drove to Universal Casting and pretty much got hired on the spot.
Nice.
But it turned out that I ended up getting trained in at Ghostbusters just a matter of, I would say, not even months, weeks before the closing was announced. So I got to be there for its final summer and was there for the closing performances.
Wow.
But I was, just sort of barely getting my feet. I was one of the last technicians trained in there before the whole thing went away and became Twister.
That's a pretty cool accolade to have, to sort of say I was the one that killed Ghost. But no, that's not what I meant.
Yeah, it is all my fault. Honestly, I will be honest. From what I remember, I think the stage assistants probably did a lot more actual work than us. They did a lot more labor, things like setting up the props and the proton packs and the slime, and as a Tech 5, you basically spent 99% of your day sitting in a booth, pressing a green button every 20 minutes or so, and occasionally looking through a window.
Wow.
And it was really not a very high stress, high demand job unless something went wrong, and then it very quickly became high stress. But honestly, people asked me, "Oh wow, how did all that work?" We weren't the blue shirts. We weren't the tech services guys who came in overnight and actually made all the animatronics work. We were the monkeys who literally got to push a button. And it's kind of like a dead man switch situation where there were certain points in the show where a lift was operating or machinery was moving that could potentially harm an actor, and basically our only real job was to hit the button to start the show and then hold down another button to confirm that no one was going to die. And so in a lot of ways our jobs could have been done by a heavy book.
Selling yourself there, Seth.
But we did get to do things like be the first ones in there in the morning. Nice. And you would run a test show every day and basically get to look in on the animatronics. If in case anyone there, I don't want to spoil, but there were not actual ghosts. It was very much like the Haunted Mansion. Where you've got a big plane of glass separating the audience from the animatronics, which appear as ghosts floating over the stage. And so the much like the cars when you're on the Haunted Mansion are elevated, the control booth for Ghostbusters was elevated. It was directly above the heads of the audience. And we had a window. We could look out over the audience and see, the stage as the audience would see. But we could also look through a window the opposite direction to see all of this big, giant black room that was basically a mirror image of the stage that had all of the animatronic figures. And they were all on like either sleds or arms or something to lift them up or move them at the appropriate time. I thought the most interesting part of that wasn't the ghosts were all really cool because they look like giant clowns. They were, I think, designed by the same people who did Killer Clowns from Outer Space. So they had
did have that look.
kind of look to them.
Yeah.
But what I thought was even cooler was the proton wands. There were there's 2 of them or 4 of them on the stage. But basically every time that they would shoot the proton wands on stage, it was this long bar, many meters long, of twisted neon, and I don't know if it was neon or argon or laser, but it was basically these tubes that were all twisted in the shape of like a proton beam from the movie, that they would illuminate, but then they would move on these computer-controlled sleds, these arms that would basically shuffle it and swivel them around the room to be into the next position. So the Ghostbusters, the actors on stage, are running around to hit their marks and hold the proton wand in the exact right place. But at the same time, the wand that is behind all of the audience, behind and above the audience, basically, is itself kind of being puppeteered by these computer-controlled arms to slide into the next position. And it was kind of like this big dance done between the machinery in the big black room on one side and the actors on the glass on the opposite side. It was really cool for the first few weeks, and it was very quick to take it for granted. You know, I can remember the first time going to the Ghostbusters show as a guest before moving down there and just being blown away by the technology and thinking how cool it would be to work on the show. And that wore off in a couple weeks.
Yeah.
I take it that tech booth, Seth, won't have changed when it became Twister.
I don't know if the Twister tech booth, which you could see, you could kind of look.
We got to go up and we were there. So when the day they announced Twister closing, I
don't believe that's
okay.
Was that did they tell you on a tour or something that was the same tech booth?
I can't remember.
There were some old lockers that were kept.
Yes. Yeah, we saw those.
I was just wondering because the day it was announced that Twister was closing, we went and did the booth tour in Twister, and I was just wondering if it was because it sounds what you're describing of looking out over the Ghostbusters set seemed very similar to what I remember looking out over Twister when we saw that.
The only thing I can say is though that I remember us being significantly higher over the heads of the audience. I know that for Twister they kind of built up the floor a little to be able to do that drop, but I still don't feel like, I don't know. I was not around for that, so I can't say for sure. But I feel like that was gutted and rebuilt. I can remember being there before they announced that Twister was coming, before they announced the closure of Ghostbusters, when there was rumors going around, and I can remember people from Universal Creative coming in and walking through our catwalks and pointing at the stage and talking about, oh, well, the hut will go over there and the building will go over there, and wondering what exactly they were talking about and finding out a few weeks later. But other than that, juicy tidbits. I can tell you one, basically every show was pretty much exactly the same, but there's one performance that particularly stands out as being a little bit different. Well, actually two. The very final performance, I was there for closing day. And Michael Moorman, who was one of the original Ghostbusters in the very first version of the show, and then went on to being one of the heads of the entertainment department, and is still active. He's retired from Universal, but he's still active in the theater community here. He just did a show, a dance piece with my wife, who's a choreographer.
Cool.
And his name is on the Firehouse station still. He came back to perform Winston for the last performance.
Awesome.
Wow.
And had not done, I don't know if he had ever done that version of the show, because the version of the show I worked on was the second version of the show. It was redone by Gary Goddard's Landmark Entertainment. The first version was kind of longer and slower, and the version I worked on was a lot tighter, had a lot less Ghostbusters in it too. The Ghostbusters were only kind of in it for the last 3 minutes of the show, basically. But Michael Moorman came back, and I can remember them kind of pushing him through the show to get to his blocking, because it had been a long, long time since he had been on stage with a proton pack. So that was a lot of fun, and getting to take there's a big group photo out there with like dozens and dozens of tiny faces, and I'm in the back there somewhere.
Nice.
But the most memorable performance, a little bit of ennui set in, especially after the closure was announced, and it was like, the execution was drawing near, and so we would kind of get bored and distracted, and something that we liked to do in the booth was play backgammon. I learned to play backgammon. I played a lot of backgammon. And one day, me and the other tech who were, we would have overlapping shifts so we could have breaks, but we would, hang out together in the booth and played backgammon. And we did the pre-show calls and the pre-show announcements and everything as usual, and glanced over, and the animatronics were running as usual, and nothing seemed off until we noticed that the actor who plays Louis Tully was going off script and shouting about, boy, I wish the Ghostbusters were here. I could really use some help from the Ghostbusters. Oh. So we decided to look up from our board and actually look out on the stage and notice that even though the Ghostbusters, the Ghostbusters were supposed to be on stage at that point, that they were gone. They were missing. Oh. And the only one, only person just staying on stage was Louis Tully, who knew everyone else's blocking so well that he was trying to run around and hit all three of the other actors' proton points.
Brilliant.
And then finally, with about 30 seconds to go before the very end of the show, all the Ghostbusters pile out on stage.
Whoa. What?
And say, hey guys, we're here.
Oh my God.
They come out the end and they kind of do a slightly extended meet and greet, waving at the audience, who was very confused as they leave.
Yeah.
And we probably had, the ride and show folks heard some folks who wanted to see it again back into the pre-show. It's like, all right, if you want to see the next show, you can go. But I never quite figured out exactly whose fault it was. We might have forgotten to hold down the button when making the microphone and announcement on the microphone that the next show is up. They might have forgotten in the green room where they were always either chatting or watching TV or wherever. They might have forgotten to look at the clock.
Yeah.
Or, you do a show over and over. Every half hour, 20 minutes for, years on end, you start to get into a rut and a routine, and things like that can sneak up on you. I don't think we had to give any refunds or anything today. I don't remember anyone getting fired, but we did get a stern talking to pay a little more attention in the booth.
Well, I mean, the show did close, Seth.
Yeah. Not my fault, though. That was announced long before.
They said, we're done.
Well, you know what? Speaking about that, so do you have any insights? Since obviously you were there when it closed, but any insight as to why it closed, right? Because it was an opening day attraction, 6-year lifespan seems kind of short for an attraction.
Yeah. I mean, I know it probably had relatively high operating costs to keep the animatronics in good condition. The LN2 alone for for the Snape Puff Marshmallow Man. A lot of people forget that big finale blast of fog was kind of like the Terminator blast before they did that. That was like the first version of that, and that stuff was actually pretty expensive from what I understand. Okay. And Twister probably had a higher hourly capacity because it was a shorter show, but didn't require as many human beings to run it. You didn't need a stage full of actors, and actors are one of the better paid labor in any theme park. And maybe they looked and saw, we've got this idea for a Twister show, we've got Terminator show coming up within the next year. Maybe it's time to say goodbye to the Ghostbusters. I mean, it's a shame. I'm glad that they transitioned them to a street show and hopefully are now bringing them back into the parks. But I don't think you'll ever see anything quite on the scale of that illusion. Just to build panes of glass that big. They're not going to spend that kind of money these days.
Slap a screen up there.
And I think people now have more sophisticated taste, which doesn't necessarily mean better.
Well, I mean, we never saw it.
Because I like physical stuff.
Yeah, we never saw it firsthand. We watched a YouTube video of it yesterday, and it was very 1990s.
And I loved it.
Yeah, and honestly, it is definitely much like the Haunted Mansion's ballroom. It is not something that video cameras, especially 1990s video cameras, do justice. It really was, in its time, a really remarkable illusion. And when the show was, when it was not tired, when the show was clicking on all cylinders, it really got a great audience reaction. I mean, people really did enjoy the show, and while maybe it wasn't a sellout every performance during the time I was there, it also certainly wasn't empty. I think it still had some popularity even up until its closing.
Yeah. How many shows do you think it ran daily?
Oh, that is a really good question. I'm trying to remember.
Was it like a constantly moving thing?
I am gonna say it was probably in a peak summer. We'd easily do 20 shows a day.
Wow!
Okay.
Wow! That's quite a lot.
I seem to remember it was either a 20-minute cycle. I might be confusing it with Terminator, because when I went from Ghostbusters to Terminator, Terminator was new, and we started doing 18-minute cycles and then dropped to 20-minute cycles, and then during slow seasons we would do 30-minute cycles. So I'm thinking Ghostbusters we probably did that on 30s during a peak season. So 2 shows an hour from 9 in the morning until, I don't know, 8. Back in the day during a peak season, Universal would regularly be open from 9 in the morning until 10 at night.
Why don't they do that now?
I know.
Or at least 9. Yeah, I really wish the parks were open at least 9 to 9. At least Epcot hours.
Yeah. Like, we've complained about it a lot. Like, all the light packages they put on the attractions nowadays, and yet they're barely open at the dark anymore.
Yeah. Well, you just got to come in the summer.
I don't want to come in the summer.
We won't talk about the tragedy of Volcano Bay, where no one gets to see Volcano Bay's lighting package for more than half an hour.
Yeah,
unless you're spending a fortune on one of those Volcano Bay view rooms at Cabana Bay.
Exactly.
They're not that expensive.
Well, they're not. You're right. I've stayed in one. Fair enough.
Yeah, but then you can't sleep past class open. When the conch shell alarm starts going off. I want to know how to make that volcano snooze.
Yeah.
Earplugs, my friend. That's how.
I don't remember getting woken up.
It was our first morning in Orlando, to be fair, so we were up at the crack of dawn anyway, so it didn't bother us. But apparently it's the sound of them sacrificing virgins at 7 o'clock in the morning that wakes most people up.
In Orlando?
Yeah, apparently. That's all our Orlando listeners turned off. How dare you?
I'll be here all week.
I'm sorry you couldn't give us a bit more, Seth, to be fair. It's still interesting to talk to people from behind the scenes and stuff.
Well, it's one of those things that maybe if I had a couple beers and some old photos to look at, I could... Yeah. Right, but we're talking almost 30 years ago.
Of course,
now,
of course.
Yeah. I don't know about you, Seth. I can't remember what I did last week. So,
It's interesting to talk to someone, even just at a low level, because I think a lot of people listening, I'd love to work at a theme park, and don't realise that there are jobs at theme parks as well.
And I definitely will not call working at Ghostbusters a job. No. I really do. I look back on it. I talked a lot about how it was repetitive and how we need to play board games to distract ourselves. Yeah. But that is like, looking back on it, that's like when you're young, you don't appreciate.
Exactly.
There were a lot of really cool people that I got to meet. Who have gone on to big things in the entertainment or the theme park industry who came through Ghostbusters.
That's cool.
There's folks that I'm went on to do shows with later, or still in touch with. So there's still kind of like a little bit of a Ghostbusters community in Orlando, or in the subculture of Universal Orlando family. And that's I definitely have fond memories. I will say, like, compared to some of the other, like, I worked at the Barney show, and I will take 1,000 years at Ghostbusters over a week at Barney.
Heck yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we only did like 10 or 12 shows a day at Barney, but one show a day of I Love You, You Love Me. The only thing that saved my life in Barney was that there were really, really great people who worked there. Again, everyone that I got to work with backstage. Not that we talk every day anymore, but there are some folks there that I still some who have either gone on to start their own companies or moved up the ladder, or a few that are still like in the animated department that I will still see in the parks and always say hi to.
Yeah. I will say that slime wrangler had a job at the end of the show that we watched, because that kid got... It looked like an entire pint of slime. That poor kid
was nasty. I do remember. I am glad that I was not responsible for maintaining it, because it would, by the end of a day, it would have everything that had been on anyone's hands. You're not. And there wasn't an unlimited supply of it. It had to be, purchased on a purchase order or whatever. And so they wouldn't necessarily want them opening up a fresh jar of slime every day. So they kind of, want to make the slime last. Yeah. And I'm very glad that I was not a slime wrangler. Because by the time you did replace the slime, it was ready to go.
Yeah, I can imagine.
The days before COVID.
Yeah,
we did not.
Sanitizer,
even just putting that thing on everyone's head, the brain reading thing, if you did that today, you would have to disinfect it and everything between every person. I don't recall us having a lot of.
Oh my God, are you serious? You just
I don't remember that.
I on the next person, lice and all, huh?
I mean, we probably wiped it down
with a rag full of lice.
Luckily, that wasn't my responsibility. I claim no responsibility for that. So.
They just threw the slime in it to get all the junk out of the hat.
It's that putty, the stuff you use to clean your keyboard.
That's the same stuff. Yeah, that's what they use it for now.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Pretty much. Yeah.
Awesome.
And I was sad to see it go. Yeah. And then I was sad to see Twister go. I personally, I think we've kind of been on a steady decline. But I did manage to save a piece of Twister. I have one of the doors from Aunt Meg's Aunt Meg, right? Yeah, that's her name. The queue that was like her destroyed house.
That's cool.
Part of it sits in my house now.
That's so cool.
It was interesting walking out back. That was back when Williams of Hollywood sold props from the parks, and it was interesting explaining that to security as I walked out through the turnstiles out to the parking garage with that.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Cool.
This whole thing, I brought it with me.
Yes. Well, thank you, Seth, and we do appreciate you coming on to talk to us.
Thoroughly enjoyed that.
It's always good to have you on, you know that.
Of course.
It is always a pleasure talking, and I can't wait to hear what other Ghostbusters memories your other guests come up with.
Awesome. Thanks, Seth.
Thank you.
I wish to go to Universal.
Right, off you go. We'll beat to the edge of the Forbidden Forest.
Where can our vacation wizards take you? Just tap the port key at portkeyvacations.com and let the magic begin.
Welcome back, everyone. We are continuing our look at the Ghostbusters stuff at Universal Studios Florida, and we are now very honoured to be joined by two very special guests. We have Jaimz Dillman and Eric Miles. Hi, guys, and welcome to the podcast.
Hello. Thanks for having us.
Thanks for coming on.
Hey, anytime is bustin' time.
That's so true.
Bustin' makes me feel good.
I've heard that somewhere.
Okay, can you both tell us your Ghostbusters roles at the parks and a brief history of how your life led you into these roles? We can go Jaimz, then Eric, please.
Oh, yeah, sure. So at the time I was working at Universal, I was on a show called Game Lab, which was for Nickelodeon, and that's where Eric was as well. That's how we met each other. And the Ghostbusters were doing, their show at their venue, and then the show closed to make way for a new attraction as things happen at theme parks. And the Busters were kind of left to wander the park, and they started having their breaks in our trailer, the same place where we would have our breaks. So we got to know the guys really well, and got to know their sets and stuff like that. And I personally became really good friends with a lot of those guys. I was already a huge fan of the movie before that, and getting to know the Ghostbusters, know what they did in their sets, and their terminology and their jargon and stuff was kind of cool to to get to be a part of during my breaks and such. And then there was a chance to audition to become a Ghostbuster because they went away from the original 4 characters and created a storyline that Winston had come to Orlando, Universal Studios Orlando, to open a Ghostbusters Academy. And so in that idea, he could have anybody be a Buster, and everybody was. I tell you, the lineup that we got of some of these characters were crazy, which was a lot of fun. Because at the time we really didn't have a lot of improv opportunities, and that's my background. I've been doing improv for over 20 years, and at the time I was performing at a theater here in town called SAC Comedy Lab, and that's where Wayne Brady is from. So it kind of gives you an idea of the talent caliber that came from that theater. And one of the show directors at Universal was also one of my instructors over at SAC, and opening this opportunity to the theme park actors to do something that wasn't a structured character, like, one of the original classic movies that Universal had, like the Marx Brothers. They had Mae West, they had Laurel and Hardy. They were kind of moving away from that and moving into giving us a little bit more freedom to be creative ourselves. Okay. So with the auditions for what they called the Street Busters, we had to write a character description of who our character was, a backstory, what they, kind of where they came from and how they got into ghost busting, and then do an audition with a monologue. And my character was Mal, which I don't know if you know that actually means bad. And she was a very bad psychic.
Wow.
She could tell you it's going to rain as it started to drizzle. That was, but every now and again, it's kind of funny because every now and again she would get something right. And that would be when we were busting ghosts out of the facade sets along the streets of New York and whatnot. It's kind of funny if you know the Harry Potter lore. Professor Trelawney is kind of similar.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So I was like, okay, I see you, Rowling. Like no residuals for me, thanks. But yeah, so that was kind of fun. We got to create our own lore and we got to create our own backstory. And the Ghostbusters was the first movie I got to see in a drive-in when I was in 4th grade. So, I still remember that very vividly, very core memory. Me and my brothers and sisters in our pajamas in Mom's station wagon watching that at the drive-thru.
Awesome.
Yeah. And so growing up, knowing these movies, loving these movies, obviously watching them whenever they were on reruns and whatnot on cable. And then getting to be friends with the guys who played it, kind of starstruck. Yeah. As a fledgling theme park employee. And then getting to finally be a part of something that was so unique and different. We would do sets on the streets where we would go into the facades of Universal, and you would hear the audio from the car of us busting, quote unquote, a ghost inside. And we would come out with a smoking trap or a shaking trap or something along those lines. Or we would find a guest out in the crowd and suck a ghost out of his head, and then the trap would shake, and just silly fun stuff like that. That was kind of innovative at the time, because this was like 98. And stuff like that really wasn't being done at Universal. So being a part of something that we got to kind of create on the fly, and everybody was so creative. I mean, we had a Scottish Ghostbuster. We had a Ghostbuster who would wear his underwear on the outside because he was just that kooky. We had a surfer Ghostbuster. Gosh, we had so many different kinds of personalities. For a while, they also had the extreme Ghostbusters, and my girlfriend Sin got to do them, do Kylie from that. But when we created our own characters, we got to come up with some really unique stuff, and I'm forever grateful for that.
I love stuff like that. You get a lot more of that sort of impromptu sort of streetmosphere stuff in the parks a lot more now, because it did go away for a little bit, and I like the fact that Universal have doubled down on it a lot recently and really added that into the parks, because it makes a huge difference to the guest experience of just randomly happening on to like more recently we've talked about it, the Pirates in Port of Entry that they've recently gone away, and it's such a shame because we had an absolute blast with them when we were over last year, and it's sad to see little bits like that go away.
Well, what I loved about it too was that it was a blind casting. With Ghostbusters being so rooted in the 4 characters that everybody knows and loves from the movies, we were really honored to be able to not only make up our own character, but also be, a gender blind casting and not have it just be the boys club. We got to be a part of the girls club. Girls club? We made our own girls club. I do remember one day Sin and I were scheduled together, and for some other reason there was no other busters that day. People call out or have to fill other roles in the park. And admittedly, the girls were not drivers of the Ecto, and I think that's a good thing, because I'll tell you something about the Ecto. We started it with a butter knife.
Wow.
So we were walking and doing our sets, just meeting and greeting and taking pictures and signing autographs and all that such. And a guest was like, well, were you guys supposed to be exterminators? We were, yeah.
Brilliant.
Huge bugs, but so that was kind of funny. But once people realized who we were and why we were, there was no questioning. It was just accepted. And it was kind of like, oh, cool, Girl Busters, all right. And then when the 2016 movie came out, me and Sin were kind of side-eyeing going, all right, we did it first. But it wasn't such a huge thing back then, because it wasn't done on purpose to be, hey, look at us, we checked another box.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was more, hey, look at these actors who have amazing abilities to interact with guests. And that's all they wanted.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. Awesome.
Fantastic. Eric.
Oh, hi.
Your turn. Top that.
Eric did the other stuff.
So I didn't get to do the improv as much because obviously our show was scripted, but it was on tracks, actually, audio tracks. You really couldn't improv at all. Except in the beginning when I was doing Louis Tully, obviously the first room was all audience interaction, and it was a unique experience. I will say that was my first experience into Universal. So I had come off the road. I was traveling. I did a world tour with a group called Up With People. And when I got off the road, I went back to my small town in Pennsylvania and pretty much was claustrophobic. I was like, I got to get out of here. So I moved down here because at that time in the early 90s, Orlando was booming as far as movies and television was concerned, more television than anything else. But so I came down here for that purpose. And then within 2 weeks of moving here, I auditioned. Universal had an open audition. I went in and I read, and they hired me to play this character, Louis Tully. And I love Ghostbusters. So to me, I was like, that's crazy. Now, obviously, this is an audio broadcast and you can't see. I'm not a little. I'm actually a fairly built person. And to play Louis Tully.
You're a little teapot.
Yeah. To play Louis Tully, I always got notes. Be smaller. I'm like, I can't physically be smaller. But I had that, I was able to do the voice, and I'm vertically challenged, 5'9", so I guess I was okay from that regard. Because the Ghostbusters themselves, they usually hired guys that were over 6 foot.
Yeah.
Wow.
But we had what we called the mini Ghostbusters, where these guys were all my size. So we would go out on stage and they were all the same height as Louis. In fact, one of them, I was taller than them. So they called them the mini busters. It was funny. But yeah, I mean, I thought for the years that I did it, the technology was pretty awesome. I don't know if you guys ever got to see it live or if you've only seen videos on YouTube, but it was pretty impressive when you go into the second room and, it's all blacked out until Walter Peck, who I also played, shuts down the Ghostbusters. And then there's this flash and everybody looks up, and you can always, every show I ever did, and I did a lot of them, you'd always hear a collective gasp in the audience because they were not expecting to see this huge room appear above their heads. And that was always a really cool reveal to be able to do that.
Yeah, it's similar to, I suppose, the big room drop at the end of Poseidon's Fury. Like that similar thing.
Rest in peace, Poseidon's Fury.
Yeah.
Yep, that's exactly right. You weren't expecting it, and then there they are. But the Ghostbusters, the actual guys, they had it really good in that show because they didn't have to say anything. It was all lip synced. And I think they were on stage for 1.5 minutes.
Wow.
And as a Louis Tully, I mean, I'm doing a 10-minute pre-show by myself with the audience and then running into the main room and then doing the the back and forth with Walter Peck, and then having to run off stage, run backstage, because it's all timed. Once the switch went off, it's timed. There's nothing you can do about it. It's going to run through its cycle. And as a Lewis, you had to run down the steps and get off stage and run back, get your power pack on. Then you had to run up to the stairs where the dogs were to be able to come out in time, because when the music started, I mean, you had to be there. So it was actually a very physical role. It was very demanding.
Eric, were they all considered actor A?
No.
That's surprising.
No, they were actor Bs.
Okay,
and Lewis was the only actor A.
So in the theme park world, you get different pay rates depending on what you do in a show.
Okay.
And most of the time, actor Bs are the ones, like Eric said, they're lip syncing, or they're not doing scripted stuff. So Tully being actor A is actually kind of cool, because he's actually the secondary character in Busters, but he was the primary character in the show.
That's awesome. Where he should be.
It was the Lewis Tully show.
Yeah, it was.
Featuring Ghostbusters.
Here's the funny thing about that. At the end of the show, like the doors open up, we save the day, they go outside, then we all go outside and meet and greet.
Awesome.
So here I am sweating like crazy because I just did a show basically
in a polyester jacket.
Wow.
Yes, with gunk in my hair, which I think is part of the reason why I don't have any anymore.
You're in good company.
But it was funny is everybody would gravitate to the Ghostbusters, of course, right?
Yeah.
They're the heroes. So they're on stage for a minute and a half, didn't say a freaking word. Here's Lewis Tully, and I'm like, oh gosh, I'm all by myself. And they're all like one of the pictures with,
like, seriously having a Tully moment.
Yeah. And that took me years, by the way, because every picture you ever took, you always had to smile with and put a thumb up.
Yes.
It took me years to get over that. And if you look at pictures of me with my family, with my friends, I'm smiling with my thumb up.
Same. That used to be a joke with us. If you to audition to be a Ghostbuster, you had to be able to, take a picture with your thumb up and smile. And if any of us get together, we still take that picture because it's so iconic.
It totally.
I think we did it. We did it last month, didn't we?
Yes, we did.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
But then I also got to play Walter Peck, which was the bad guy, and that was a lot of fun. I enjoyed that.
Everyone seems to say the bad guys are the better part to play.
Yeah. How great that they brought the same guy back for the new movie too.
Yeah, that's true. Mm-hmm. They did.
Yeah, it's interesting because I know, Chris, did you say you saw the Spooktacular in person, didn't you?
Yeah. I mean, I was a kid, so just small bits and pieces of like that memory. Watching the video obviously kind of jolted a little bit, but yeah, it was such a cool show to watch. I think it was really ahead of its time.
And as a kid, I'm sure it was even more impactful because everything was so much larger. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah. I mean, everything. I guess if I were to go back and watch it now, I'm like, well, it's not that big, but back then it was just.
Oh no, it was massive. Yeah.
It's crazy. Yeah.
You never know. You could have seen one of my shows.
It's very possible.
Very true.
Yeah, my parents had been taking me to theme parks since I was literally like 3 weeks old, so I probably saw you guys perform.
I love the fact that the Chiodo brothers are part of that too, and that they've become such a cult following with the Killer Clowns from Outer Space. I'm kind of a nerd when it comes to horror stuff like that, and kind of making that connection, having them do the animatronics for that show, and be known worldwide for that other thing they've done is kind of cool.
We're suckers for this behind the scenes, just fun stories. And I'd love to ask, do you guys have any funny, interesting, entertaining things that happen?
Oh, so much.
What rated is this?
What rating is this?
Whenever you want to go, like I will just say, just go and we'll see where it goes.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I was saying, the funny things, like they made us new keys for the car. And they were immediately lost. So we figured it out the guys got it figured out to be able just to start it with a butter knife. And when the new movie came out and they were having a hard time starting the ecto, Sin and I were in the audience saying, "Get the butter knife." And, anybody who was a Ghostbuster knew what that meant. And then they sent the car out to get repainted one time. So we were out the car without it for about 2 weeks, and that was us just kind of walking around and doing autographs and pictures because the car was our audio. So whatever busting sounds you would hear from us doing inside of a building came from the car. And we were just standing inside the building looking at each other, making faces. While the audio ran and we were saying the lines on our microphones. But then when the car came back from being repainted, we're all excited. It's all nice and refreshed. We go out to do a set. We go to the back to open the back door to get our proton packs out. And they painted the damn door shut.
Oh no.
So we're all on set looking at each other like, well, guess it's just pictures this time. Wow. It was, little things like that was just funny.
Well, do you remember what I said, how that's all time? Once Walter Peck pulled the switch and shut it down, then that clock starts. Well, sometimes you would have Ghostbusters who weren't really paying attention and maybe were in the bathroom.
Oh no.
Wow.
We would run out and we'd be minus a Ghostbuster. Like there would be, you would just hear this voice out of nowhere, get him. And then you see the stream come out of nowhere because you're supposed to, because it was a reflection. So you're looking at, and you're lining it up. So it looks like it's coming out of your wand, but it's not. And there would just be this plasma. Wow. Nobody's there.
Oh.
Or what the heck? You had 1 minute job.
Know, right?
Yeah.
Oh, there's so many
when
things.
Nature calls and what are you going to do? And then sometimes they would not be able to, like somebody would call in, right? And they wouldn't have a Winston. So what do? You don't have a Winston, right? So they would.
And not everybody can play Winston.
No, but they made it. So we called him Whiteston. Because yes, they had to put. I remember that. It was so ridiculously funny.
Oh my gosh, that's
because you're like, are you kidding me? Just like, it's like, what's your choice at this point?
Yeah.
Either you have this disemboweled voice with lasers coming out of nowhere, or you have this guy. Clearly not Winston, playing the part.
Well, when the show closed, a lot of the props and stuff were dispersed to other places. And when the Street Busters came over to break in our trailer, the huge industrial size vat of slime came with them. So when the boys would go out on sets at that time, they would take little containers of slime to have out there as props or let the kids touch it or whatever. But by the end of the day, it was so disgusting from so many people touching it. It was not hot pink anymore. It was like a grimy, like grayish. It was so gross. Like I'm so ruined between Nickelodeon and Ghostbusters for slime. I don't, God, I don't want to have anything to do with it ever again.
The days before COVID as well. When everyone could touch it without having to sanitize.
Very, very true.
Antibacterial? What's that?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But the Superstar Parade was really, really fun because that was literally all the celebrity cars like Marilyn, Laurel and Hardy, the Marx Brothers. We would all, do, and then the Ecto and Scooby. We would all do kind of a little parade through the park. Nothing big or flashy, but enough to give guests a picture opportunity, break up the day. And, we would all play pranks on each other. There were different things that we would do. Like one of the Marx Brothers, Harpo Banks, he's one of my favorite people in the world. He would roller skate in the parade, and he would skate through the candy shop, dip through, grab a handful of jelly beans and skate out the other side, and then go down the parade route and give all of us little jelly beans as we're riding in the parade route. Just like random stuff like that. There's a couple of rules now for entertainers that were made because of those days. Like the Marx Brothers were always getting in trouble for getting in the fountains.
Oh.
All sorts of stuff that we're no longer no climbing on the signs.
The fun stuff.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we were in character, but there got to be a point where corporate started taking over and it started being less fun and more structured.
Yeah.
Which I can understand for safety's sake and for legal reasons that those things have to happen. Yeah. But it was kind of a wild west time.
Yeah, that's true.
Theme parks are much busier places than they were back then.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. There was some things as far as like I said, driving the car. The girls were never drivers of the car. We had to make sure that was always top-notch important of the safety through the park, and there were times that cars broke down. I mean, the Blues Brothers mobile I've seen a few times. I just kind of left because it wouldn't start again.
Well, there was times when the show would break down, like and as a Lewis Tully, and I'm in the first room because it was on a cycle, right? So sometimes we would do shows back to back where I'd literally finish a show and have to run back out and start the next one immediately. And if the show broke down, you'd literally get the sign from the stage assistant looking at you like, stretch, stretch. And I'm telling you, sometimes we would have to stretch. I was improvising for 10, 15 minutes.
Wow.
Before they would say, well, all right, we're closing it. And then
that would happen at Disaster.
And then I remember one time I was Walter Peck and I shut the Ghostbusters down. Shutting you down. Boom. And nothing happened. And I did it again. I'm telling you, I'm shutting it. Nothing happened. And then you have to wing it. I mean, and I would I would say, all right, you're under arrest. And I would take Lewis and put his hands behind his back and walk him off stage. And then you hear the, sorry, ladies and gentlemen.
Is that something you guys thrive off of? That
that
last minute, do something.
Yes and no. Like I would say, there's a point when you know that they're going to dump the audience and you can tell the audience is getting frustrated and you're just like, just let them go. Like, why are you trying to, have me maintain these people? Just let them get out and move on to the next ride or show or whatever.
Especially when it's in the middle of summer.
Yeah. You'd get frustrated sometimes with that. But improv, all actors love that. I mean, thinking off the top of your head, there's nothing better if you can come up with a joke immediately and people laugh at it, you're like, hey.
Yeah, especially if you're working with a cast that totally supports you too. Like, that's another thing about the Busters, man, is like everybody supported everybody and their choices, or you would workshop something on your break about, oh, how about we try this? Or you could just see like a connection being made sometimes on set when you're like back and forth with somebody and with a guest. Ed Budd was really, really good at that. Kenny Babel was really great at that. A lot of our Winstons were so great with people, and like you could just tell everybody was so happy to be there, and the looks on people's faces when that car came around the corner or they could hear the sirens. I mean, it's iconic, right? And to be a part of that, it's something that I'll forever have on my resume.
It's one of those things with the pair of you, the experience, like the shows you were both in were audience participatory as well, and that's one of those things that you never know what you're going to get as a guest interaction.
Oh, for sure.
Oh my gosh, the stories we can tell you about Nickelodeon's Game Lab and some of the stuff that came out of kids' mouths. Oh my.
I feel another episode coming up. We haven't covered Nickelodeon much on here.
You want stories there? We've got so many people we can call, so many stories, and then you'd have to make an After Dark version for sure.
I've
done.
Climbed on that show, so I'd love to hear that.
Oh my gosh. Those shows, stories, they're endless.
I always thought it would be the best reality show because at the time we were at Game Lab, that's when all the reality shows started coming out, like Survivor, Big Brother, all those shows. And I always thought a green room of a kid's show would be either the very best or the very worst reality show, because you just can't believe some of this. Honestly, anybody should have to work at a theme park for a minimum of 3 years, because you will see every facet of humanity, good and bad, that you can think of.
We have said people are idiots at the best of time. Theme park people are a completely different breed, and I count myself in those.
We're all lunatics.
But it definitely sets you up for a lot of things. Like, honestly, I wouldn't have what I do now. I have a burlesque group that, I've been doing this for almost 10 years now, and I wouldn't have the hosting presence or the idea to manage a cast or create a shape of show without the improv training, without the background of, and I've always said it, if a theme park teaches you one thing, there's no answer is no, it's let me see what I can do.
Yes.
And if you use that going forward in life, it changes so many things for you, and you'll start expecting it from other people and not accepting less.
I would say the talent pool here in Orlando is the most underrated talent pool in the country.
Yeah, I would agree with that. With the actors that we've come into, into contact with at the parks. I mean, I'm going to go back to guys. Scare actor dining at Horror Nights in 2019.
Wow,
that Dr. Frankenstein in there was phenomenal.
Yeah,
I was a Horror Nights person too. I did 7 years doing doing houses, doing stage managing. I performed on the streets, and it is a special kind of person that does Horror Nights, man.
Yeah. I did Horror Nights for 3 years. I was in the houses for 2, and then I did a Bill and Ted show.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
I was always so jealous of Bill and Ted. Bill and Ted was like the school play.
Oh,
you know what I mean?
Fantastic. I did it in 95 when Pulp Fiction came out, and I got to play John Travolta.
Brilliant.
Oh,
it was fantastic.
Eric, I kind of mentioned this. I literally was going to say this before, but your photo reminds me of a John Travolta.
Oh yeah, he
It
is.
does actually.
It's so weird. I thought I was gonna die.
Oh my God.
Wow, that is so good. Like, I'm pretty sure you hear it a lot, but man, you look like it.
But yeah, man, Bill and Ted was like the school play where all the popular kids got to play, and you all just wanted to be a part of them. And then you get the groupies of the fans that would come and see the show night after night, show after show. And I mean, I guess Nightmare Fuel gets those people now too.
Yes.
But doing away with that show left such a hole, man.
Sure did.
I agree.
I really wish they would bring it back, and I'm hoping that nostalgia, will hit somewhere there, and they bring back something that's along those lines. But
I agree.
I used to tell
Keep bringing Jack back occasionally.
yeah.
That's awesome. Well, speaking about nostalgia and bringing things back, so obviously Ghostbusters is coming back in a small way, but it's coming back to the parks. Are you guys excited about that? How do you feel about that? Do you think it's going to go over well in today's?
Oh, of course.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think they're bringing it back with the car and the parade. Is that what it is?
I'm part of the
nothing specific.
Lagoon show as well. Yeah.
Nothing specific has been said, and as far as any busters, quote unquote, I don't know for sure.
Well, we're gonna have a 16-foot Stay Puft
Yes.
Man. On the parade float.
We need some busters.
If he's any smaller, that's a crime.
Absolutely.
It's his son.
But I love seeing, like I said, the wave of nostalgia and the merch coming out, and like the new generation. My daughter's 14, and she dressed up with me and went to the movie and loves it all too. So being able to share that with the next generation of kids and hopefully it continuing on. I mean, this new wave of movies, I think Reitman's done a really good job.
Yeah, agreed.
Paying homage and then building up the next round of it, and hopefully continuing on with more stories.
Yeah, he's done a better job at moving them forward than I feel the Jurassic World franchise and the Star Wars franchise did.
Oh, we're not talking about Star Wars.
No,
that's
good.
a whole nother episode.
I think it's great. I mean, my kids grew up on Ghostbusters because obviously, it's a big part of my life. That's how I met my now ex-wife. That's where I met her. She played Gozer.
Oh, nice. Wow. That's cool.
There. And so, I mean, when my daughter was just a baby, we dressed her up as Stay Puft, and my son was a Venkman.
Nice.
Brilliant.
It was great.
That's parented done right.
Yeah.
The last callback I got was for the Melissa McCarthy version of the Ghostbusters for Bill and Ted, the last year that they had. I think that was the last year of Bill and Ted's too, but they ended up not using the character here. They used it in LA, but that was kind of cool.
Yeah, I mean, people have been crying out for nostalgic stuff at Universal for a long time, and it's like you've got King Kong back in the parks, and to see sort of Back to the Future and Ghostbusters and Jaws specifically coming back this year. People have been...
Well, they've got such a rich vault
of
IPs. I mean, it's not stuff that they have to rely on from other places. Like, personally, I was kind of crushed when The Simpsons took over the whole Back to the Future area. I'm sure there is the fandom for The Simpsons. I mean, God, that show's been on forever and a day.
Yeah.
But still having Doc and Marty in the parks is so cool.
Yeah.
Because now, like you go through the parks and the mom and dad will recognize, and then the kids will be like, "Oh, that's the movie you showed me."
Yeah.
That's the connection there. Or it's, "Oh, I watched this with my grandparents."
That's if parenting is done right. But you're right.
Exactly.
Yes.
But yeah, exactly like you mentioned, we spoke about this on another episode where like Universal has this giant vault of all these properties, and they haven't really flexed them very hard. No. And now you really see them kind of coming out with that. And, as a nostalgic fan, I can't wait to see all this come out. And even going back to Ghostbusters, like to me, I grew up on that. And I feel like it's such a timeless movie. Like if you showed your kids Ghostbusters, they kind of, have that nostalgia as well, even though they didn't really grow up with it when it came out, but it just became part of their life. It's such a great property.
Yeah, they knew it's something mom and dad got excited about, so they got excited to share it.
Yeah.
And I think even continue going further. I mean, we still got Mel's, so bring back that American Graffiti. We still have the Jaws shark in the park.
Yep.
Bring back something having to do with Jaws. Keep going back. There's no reason that we should forget about the classic stars like Charlie Chaplin. Like I said, the Marx Brothers, Oliver Hardy, Mae West, all those guys. That's stuff that we need to celebrate because that's where everything we say today came from.
Yep.
And if we forget about that, it's a sad thing that that's not still celebrated. And I think it's definitely a disservice to any kids who are going forward loving movies to not have all of that as part of their
I agree.
pop culture.
You've still got Betty Boop in the parks. You've still got Marilyn in the parks, and it's like if you're going to put those in, because kids won't necessarily know who they are at this point, then why not celebrate the rest of them? I remember coming for our first visit in 2004 and meeting Ricky and Lucy at the entrance, and they were absolutely phenomenal. One of the best meet and greets we've ever done. They were brilliant.
I mean, that's way before my time, but I was raised on the reruns, so I was.
Same here.
I was so happy that day.
Yeah.
Well, I think what sometimes theme park folks forget is that families go to theme parks, not just kids.
Yep.
And so you got to have some stuff for the older folks to identify with as well.
And I think Universal does a really good job of that, more so than some of the other parks that are further down the road. And I think Universal has gotten that kind of reputation to where this is a park everybody can enjoy. They have the Nickelodeons or the Minions now, which don't get me started on Minions. It just, for one, I think I'm over it, and for two, they're freaking everywhere.
I love
but
Minions.
They have the Minions. They have the rides for the older kids. They have the shows, that kind of a thing. I think they've done a pretty good job on that. I really hope that they hold on to the golden age that made them who they are.
Yes, I agree with that completely.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because if you go back 3 or 4 years, like when Cinematic Spectacular debuted, it was what we're pushing everything that's new. So it was Trolls and Jurassic World and Potter, and it was Fast and Furious, and now it's like they've learned. Yeah, exactly. They've learned now that people want that older stuff as well. Give us the new stuff, but then mixing some of that old stuff as well, and it hits every mark at that point, and that's what I think they finally learned.
I'd love to see something like the Great Movie Ride that used to exist.
I was just about to say that. Like,
add
literally.
something that Universal could do in a space that might have to do with cars that nobody really cares about.
Yes.
Well, I hate to interrupt everybody. I do have to go. I loved spending time with everybody, but I have an appointment at 5 o'clock.
Because he's fancy. He's a lawyer.
Yes,
I do. I have a client that I have to talk to right now.
Not a problem. Eric, it's been awesome having you on. I really appreciate you taking the time to come and speak to us.
Oh, and like I said, anytime you want to talk about Nickelodeon stories, we got a ton.
Fly.
I think there may be a Nickelodeon episode.
That is happening
without a doubt.
There you go. Well, take care, everyone. And thanks again.
Thanks, Eric.
Bye.
Bye.
We've gone on some tangents, haven't we?
I could talk forever about this stuff, you guys. So anytime you wanna go off on a Halloween Horror Nights tangent or a Grinchmas tangent, I mean,
Russia Fear just took some notes. Yes.
So was that
I actually write for a website called Creepy Kingdom. So
I know that well.
We know James and Shannon. So
you know James?
Yeah.
So he's West Coast James. I'm East Coast James.
Okay.
Yeah. So I get to do a lot of fun stuff with them, covering Horror Nights and some of the events that happen throughout the different parks. But being recognized for Busters is such a cool thing because
I'm sure.
Even though it wasn't something I was full time at, it was something I was just cross trained into. It was still like I'll tell you how long ago it was. Whenever my pager went off to call me in for a shift, it was like, yes, it paid for it this month,
I always think about like doing roles like that. And I was going to mention Eric on his thing as well. Like if I had done any presence of like a show, a street performance, anything in the park, fast forward having kids, I would take my kids there and be that annoying parent goes, I used to be doing this right here on this street. I drove the car down this road.
I totally am that annoying kid, annoying mom, because now my son's there and he works with people who knew me and they're like, oh, you're James's kid. And he's like, yeah, which I kind of get. I mean, a lot of those people were his babysitter. Like his babysitters were the X-Men, you know, when he was little. He would come to horror nights and we'd see the big stage show with the caretaker and the director and Jack. And the caretaker was one of his babysitters. And he'd be like, hey, Steve. And everybody's like, why is this kid here? Why is he? And he wasn't fazed at all. You know, he was like, oh, the director is my babysitter. Big deal.
That's so cool.
That is awesome.
It's a weird childhood to have, but I think they're better for it.
Yeah.
And he's such a Horror Nights nerd. I think he learned it in utero.
There's worse things you could be a nerd about, let's be honest.
Exactly.
For sure.
So, James, before you leave, let us know if you've got anything going on that you think that our listeners would be interested in. Just plug away.
I mean, I guess
thank you. Yes.
Yes. But more.
We are getting ready to go into our really, really busy season here in Orlando because we have the International Orlando Fringe Festival coming. And it's a 2-week festival in May. And that is with over 120 different shows that have been entered into this festival unjuried, which means they haven't been picked because of their content. They were entered in a lottery and they were chosen at random to be at these different venues. Okay. There's a main space in Orlando called the Shakespeare Center and the Orlando Main Stage, where a lot of the shows happen. And then there's satellite venues called BYOVs, which is where my show happens. My burlesque show, Corsets and Cuties, this year is called Drip, because we're doing anything that's sexy and steamy and hot because it's Orlando. And we are at the Stardust Lounge, which is on Lake Eola. And it's really cool because it's an underground bar. And it's kind of like a speakeasy, nice little intimate space. And we've got some really great performances planned. And that's going to happen the 2 weekends of the festival. So we have shows Friday, Saturday. And you can find out all information online at corsetsandcuties.com.
Awesome.
I would check that out.
You would be going if we lived in Orlando.
Absolutely. Yeah, I love
that. I would have a front row seat for you.
Awesome.
Is there any social media, like you have an Instagram or anything like that that you want to plug?
Yeah, absolutely. We have Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok, which is Corsets and Cuties. Super easy. I also do an improv show on Friday nights here in Orlando called Mama's Comedy Show. And we've been going for 15 years. And we have a new location that we just started at in February. And we've sold out every week. So it's like, whose line is it anyway? But very adult.
Awesome.
We let the adults come out for a night out. So that's Friday nights. And you can find out information about that at mamascomedyshow.com. So there's a lot of really great stuff here in Orlando. We want you guys to come visit.
Perfect.
I am hearing all kinds of cool ideas for our next meetup.
I knew that's where your brain would go, Michelle.
100%.
I love that idea. Anytime, reach out.
Cool. Right. Well, we've gone completely off on a tangent at this point, but we have talked about Ghostbusters in the parks. It's great to see it coming back this year. I don't want to give a big shout out to Jeff Royds for being our producer at the beginning of the show, Seth for joining us, Eric for our intro as Lewis Tully and for joining us, and James, you've been awesome. I cannot wait to have you back on again.
100%.
Oh, my pleasure.
It's been such good fun.
It really has.
The perfect time to do a Ghostbusters show. I can't believe it's took us 13 years to get to this point, to be fair, but it seems fortuitous that this is the time that we're doing it, to be fair. Of course, we're going to wrap the show up. Don't forget, we want you to let us know how bad Fast and Furious Supercharged is by submitting your fun facts about how bad it is to us at podcast@uuopodcast.com. But until next week, we'll catch you later, guys.
Are you insane? Get out of here. The curse, it's real. The podcast is over. So, the Magi want you to check us out on Facebook, Instagram, X, YouTube, TikTok, and Pinterest. Just search UUO Podcast. For all the podcast news and articles, check out our blog at uuopodcast.com. Contact us by emailing us at podcast@uuopodcast.com. And if you want to join the Producers Club, email us at uuopproducers@gmail.com. Silence! With your subscriptions, we shall rule for all eternity. Listen and subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and everywhere else podcasts are found. Not even the Magi can save you now. There is no escape. Your end shall be my beginning. Prepare yourself for your next trip by emailing Michelle at portkeyvacations.com. She can take care of all aspects of your next Universal Orlando vacation. We hope you enjoyed your podcast. Please remain seated and keep your arms and legs inside the prepare to forfeit your souls. Check out the other podcasts on the UUOP network. Rush of Fear Halloween Horror Nights podcast, the theme park duo for all your West Coast news and info, and the Taste of Universal Orlando food podcast. So hey, welcome back. Hope you enjoyed the podcast. I would have enjoyed this podcast a lot more if I had gotten my cup of coffee.